This is problem number 3 from the Chapter 10 closure packet. Factor the following quadratic expressions completely, if possible. Factor, first of all, means that we're going to use the box and the diamond, and we are not going to solve for x. So none of these should say x equals in any of your answers. We're just going to write the outsides of the rectangle. So I'm going to start by factoring completely means if I can, I should divide these problems by something first that they all have in common for each separate problem. But let's look at the first one, a, x squared minus x minus 56. They don't have a number you can divide everything by except the number 1. They don't all have an x, so I'm just going to go ahead and do my regular generic rectangle and diamond problem. Okay. So in the bottom left corner I put x squared, the top right corner I put negative 56, and I multiply those together to get the top of the diamond. So negative 56x squared. The bottom of the diamond, or this modified diamond, is the middle term, so negative x. Make sure you keep the symbol the same. So negative x. So I need to think of things that multiply to negative 56 and could add to get me to negative x. Well, I like to think of just the regular number 56 first. So things that multiply to 56 would be 2 and 28. Just listing possibilities here. 4 and 14. 7 and 8, some other things like that. So which of these possibilities could get me to a 1 somehow? Well, 7 and 8 could get me there somehow. So I know the numbers themselves are 7 and 8x, but 1 needs to be negative because I need a negative times a positive to get me a negative number. Okay, so I'm going to make my 8 negative because if I take negative 8 plus 7, that'll get me to negative 1x. Okay, so my 8 is negative. So I'm going to put those back into the rectangle in either place that's open, doesn't matter. And now I'm going to find what they have in common. So I'm going to look at this column first. They both have an x. This column, I can divide them both by a 7. If I look sideways, this row, they both have an x. And up here, to make this work, x times what is negative 8x? Well, that has to be negative 8. And checking that that works, negative 8 times 7 is negative 56, so that's good. So our factors, or factoring it as much as we can, is just x plus 7 times x minus 8, and that is it. That means to factor, you stop. All right, part B. Very similar. There's nothing that I can divide any of the numbers by. They don't all have an x, so I'm just going to do my regular generic rectangle and diamond. So 3x squared goes in the bottom left corner, and this 1 goes in the top right. Multiply those together to get 3x squared. The bottom of the diamond is going to be that negative 4x from the middle. Okay. So things that multiply to 3, but they add to be negative 4. So things that multiply to 3 are only 3 and 1. Okay. And now I need to make something negative or both negative. So I'm trying to get a positive number when I multiply together. So they both either have to be positive or negative. They can't be one of each. And since I'm trying to add to a negative number, I'm going to make them both negative. So negative 4 minus 1x gives me negative 3 minus 1x is negative 4. So I'm going to put those back in the rectangle. And negative 1x. All right, now I'm going to look at what they have in common. Right here, they both can be divisible by 3, and they both have an x. So I'll put 3x there. This, they both can be divisible by 1. Sideways, they both have an x, and this way, they both have a 1. Now, we're missing something because we're missing some negatives in here. So we usually don't want to have our x's be negatives, we want to have the other numbers. So actually, both of these 1s will be negative 1s. And to check, negative 1 times negative 1 gives me a positive 1, but these two corners are negative numbers. So my factors are 3x minus 1 and x minus 1. And again, we're just factoring, so you just stop with the outsides of the rectangle, the area as a product. Okay? Now to look at C and D, those ones look a little bit different. For problem C, they can all be divisible by an x. They all have at least one x in the problem. So I'm going to divide everything by an x. And when I'm doing this, I need to write my x on the outside. I'm factoring out an x, is what we say. So I'm going to take away one x from each of these, so it would be 2x squared, right? The exponent tells you how many of the variables you have, plus just 1x to the first, plus the number 1. I'm taking away one x from everything. So now I'm going to factor just the part that's inside the parentheses. and then I'm going to do the box and diamond. So I have 2x squared and a 1, so I multiply those to get 2x squared. And I have a 1x down here. So things that multiply to 2 would be 2 and 1. They both have x's with them. And now I need to make it be a 1x, so when I add them together. So you would think this would be a negative 1. However, if you multiply those together, that does not give you positive 2. That would give you negative 2. So that doesn't work, right? So since I can't factor this part anymore, this is actually my final solution. That is most, this is as factor as it gets. Okay? So I cannot factor, I can't factor this any further. Okay? This does not factor. If you wanted to solve this, if it asked you to solve, you would have to use the quadratic formula or completing the square. So that's as far as we can go on part C. Now let's look at D. D, I can divide both of the numbers by a 2. Okay? So we're going to do that. We're going to write our 2 in the front and write what will be left over. Now I'm dividing the coefficient by a 2. So this is just x squared minus 25. And some of you may recognize this part in the parentheses as called the difference of squares, because both of these numbers are perfect squares. So that might be a shortcut that you know. If you don't know that, we're just going to do the rectangle and diamond again. Same process. X squared, bottom left, the constant term, minus 25 in the top right, and I multiply those to get negative 25x squared. Now the number down here is minus regular x term. Now I don't have any regular x's here, so I'm going to write 0x. Okay? So now I need things that multiply to 25. Actually negative 25. But things that multiply to 25 could be 5x and 5x. And now I need them to be multiply with a negative number and also add to be 0. So I'm going to make one of these a negative 5. Doesn't matter which side is negative because they're both the same exact number. Okay, so 5 and negative 5 multiply to negative 25 if they add to 0. Put those back in the box. And I'm going to find my outsides. Right here, these both have an x. These both have a negative and a 5. You can divide them by. Sideways, this will be an x again, and this would just be a regular 5. Okay? So my factors are factoring this original expression here. I have the 2 in the front, so 2, and then parentheses my outsides, x minus 5 times x plus 5. So make sure you read the directions. This is something I'm seeing a lot, is when you see a problem like this, you just automatically solve. So the directions say to factor, that just means leave them in parentheses. Okay? It has to say the word solve, or find the x-intercepts, or find the roots if they actually want you to get x equals some number. So this is factoring and factoring completely.